Greetings, students. Let's take a look at Essay 2. We are working on that currently. Basically, like we set up in Activity 1, this is an essay where we're going to look at and analyze the relationship between at least 5 different groups or organizations. And I would say it's a good idea. Like what I try to do with mine, and you look at my sample, is I tried to look at the way they work together. So I would say here I'll explain it, and here I'll summarize it, and then I'll explain it. Um, I think how I figured out, I conceptualized, like I thought a pretty good way to approach this was I was going to explain something like essentially like a process. However, of course, this is not a basic English class. We teach process in like two levels below freshman composition. So it's not a process paper, and I don't want to write a process paper. I don't want you to write a process paper. But what would help me understand this as an assignment and as a piece of writing, was I started to think about I started to think about like a process. Like I'll talk about mine in a minute. I thought about a process, and I thought about how these groups work in conjunction with one another to help get to the end of said process. So again, it's not a process paper. You're not doing that, but you can explain a process. What I found useful was to frame it around a process. Like I'm going to look at how, say, all 5 of these groups, for example, how they work together to make to help a process through, to see it through to the end. So that was helpful for me. I think that's the way I would look at it if I were writing it as a from a student perspective. All right, so you want to analyze how these 5 groups are related to a single issue. So, like I said, it helped me to narrow it down to a thing, a process, a procedure, where there's some stated goal, where there's some stated outcome, and then you're looking at how, say, these 5 organizations work together towards producing said outcome. Okay. But I do, yeah. Okay, so you want to write a 5-page essay. An example could be something like we looked at in Activity 1, where I talked about the idea of reclaimed water. And in fact, I think I should have gone with that one. There were reasons why I chose this one, but in retrospect, I think writing about reclaimed water might have worked out better. I'll talk about my essay in a minute, but I really thought that this was a good idea. I should have gone with that one for reasons I will explain later. In Florida, for example, some of the groups involved there are the county or the city, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, the FDEP, the Florida Department of Health, the FDOH, Florida's Public Service Commission, the PSC, the water treatment plants themselves. In this essay, I would then analyze the differences and how they interact. Yeah, I would kind of focus on that, right? How they interact. And like I said, I think this one would have worked out very well. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it would be nice to have more, so you could choose. If you had, say, 7, you could narrow it down to say these are the 5 really important groups that work together towards this outcome. In this case, I might do a little more research if I were to write about this and expand, to find those 7 different options as far as groups to give myself the different possibilities. In depth, you want to look at 5 different groups that are connected to a single issue. Try to focus on nuance or distinctions between the groups, even if they are similar. And you'll see that in my sample too. Avoid focusing the debate on a binary issue like a yes or no, or some kind of, anything that's too simplistic. So like it says here, more than 2 perspectives. Using the sources from, that would be Activity 1, I think. It says Project 1. That's Activity 1. Explore how these 5 groups are connected to the issue as well as to each other. focus on identifying the reasons why, like say like a group or like an organization might hold a particular belief. You want to use more research, do a little bit of outside research, add some secondary sources on the groups themselves. When I was looking at the groups, I mean, obviously the first thing you do is look at the web page, look at the about page, find out from the group, from the the horse's mouth, as they say, like from the group itself, how do they define and describe their purpose and what they do, and maybe why they do it. I think all those things are really connected here, certainly to an assignment like this. So we're not evaluating the perspectives. We're trying to understand the groups, understand what they believe. Let's take a little look at a sample paper here that I was putting together. There it is. Okay. So anyway, I ended up writing about fighting a wrongful conviction because this is something I know a little bit about, and this assignment allowed me to learn more about it, I guess. But in retrospect, it may not have been the best choice because I don't think there were enough really distinct groups to talk about. There were barely enough, and honestly, I feel like it was kind of a stretch. And you can see that in the way it's written. How I uploaded a sample here that needs another body paragraph. The reason it still needs another body paragraph is because I didn't choose a great topic. These things are related. Let's see. So in this example here, honestly, it's rough, and I didn't really go over it. So it's a rough draft. That should be acknowledged immediately. I think the thesis works okay. I just kind of I basically talk about the process. Like I'm talking about overturning a wrongful conviction and who are the groups that are involved in the process. So that helps me set up the two things, right? I set up, okay, here's a process that I'm going to talk about, roughly. Again, not a process paper, so I'm not going to focus on explaining the process. That's tangential. It's not material, but it's related, but not the main point. The main point is the groups and the analysis of these different organizations or groups. But what this thesis does allow you to do is it sets up those two things, right? It sets up, here are the groups. Here's the thing that we're talking about, that they're all involved in this one thing. Then let's explain how the groups are related and how this thing works. As an introduction, I'm fine with the length of this introduction, but if I were writing it, if I were a student in this class, I would say, and as an instructor, this needs more evidence. Usually in an introduction, I like to have at least 3 to 4 pieces of evidence. I only count one here in my definition of recidivism. Oh, well, no, this is a fact, so I don't have to state a fact. But technically, that is a piece of evidence. It's a common knowledge, so I don't have to cite it. So I guess that does count as evidence, but I don't have to cite it. So I have 2 pieces of evidence. Anyway, regardless, it's a rough draft, and like I was saying, we could use more evidence in the introduction. In the body paragraphs, honestly, this is where you see that it's a rough draft. I think generally I try to do one group per paragraph, but what I did with the first paragraph is the first body paragraph is that it kind of I introduce these tangential associations, Project Innocence and NACOL. When I know in my heart in revision, I would probably like to move that whole section to the paragraph where I'm going to talk about that, which would be I think just the next paragraph where I start talking about it. But it doesn't really go here. It could go in the introduction where I generally describe and have evidence here about both the projects. Perhaps I could put that in the introduction. That would make sense too. but that it's in this paragraph, it just crowds the purpose and makes it less clear the purpose of the paragraph, which should be on the lawyer. What's the role of the lawyer in this process? And that's what I should really focus on there. Um, and I bring up the trial. So I mean, I think that looking at my first body paragraph, there's kind of like three ideas or three topics there that I should really um, separate. I don't think those really all go together. I think probably focusing on the lawyer then, and then maybe the trial, in different paragraphs, that would be ideal. The next paragraph, again, I talk about those organizations those actually are fine in terms of the way they're organized. I wish there were a little bit more detail that I put in those, but it's a rough draft, so it's a good start. This one, other steps, people involved. Okay, so I see why I put that one together. That's kind of a general topic sentence that groups together a couple different parts. And then we have the paragraph on the appellate court. I did add evidence there. Good, okay. Yeah, like I said, it's pretty close. It's obviously a little short, so I need to add to fill out the rest of that page to hit 5 full pages. Other than that, those are basically my comments on it. But honestly, like I said at the beginning, I think I should have gone with one of the other topics. I don't think there were enough groups here that really gave me enough to write about. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about Essay 2 and you're writing, you're crafting, you're revising Essay 2. Make sure you've got 5 distinct groups that you can write about.